A little bit unfortunate, actually, that he wasn't able to block this, but spawning that extractor timing, he already knows exactly when speed could be finishing from there, and that's gonna wanna look to play it fairly safe behind this, make sure he's ready on time. That were 2 hits.
Of course, this is a very defensive map. You do get that in-base expansion, which is very easy to defend, and even the third base is quite defensible with just one choke point to guard. It's a map we have seen carriers in the past from a lot of Protoss players, but for Stats, he's a player who we only lately have seen those carrier transitions later on in the game, well after he's kind of got out Storm, Immortals, Archons, and a fourth base.
There are backrocks to that pocket expansion that you get, but getting through those takes a long, long time. Usually, also, like, you will be taking a very poor engagement, usually if you have to go up that ramp. So even for Zerg to actually go through that, especially with Dark style, where he plays with a lot of Zerglings, Banelings, and then into Hydralisks, it's very unlikely that we see that come into play.
That is going to make things difficult for the Zerg player who loves to throw in those counterattacks. He's one of these Zergs who is just relentless. He will throw Banelings into the probe lines over and over again, looking for that weakness in the Protoss armor. But here on this map, there's just not that many paths in, so Stats definitely going to be more comfortable on this map, and Dark maybe going to have to rely on drops a little bit more to get the damage onto the Protoss player.
Yeah, Dark looked fantastic, I thought, in his series against Showtime. One of the best PvZ, in my opinion, around. So definitely bodes well here for him going up against Stats, who definitely is also one of the absolute best versus Zerg. Top mining gas fully here a while back, so no early on drops shenanigans, and the Stargates in the back of his main base here. It's going to be the choice for Stats. So a lot of the time here, we're going to be seeing 1 to 2 oracles just to do some harassment, force spores, snipe some drones here and there. And those synergize very, very well with Adepts, which are very good anti-ground units as well, and are countered very differently because obviously spores don't attack on the ground.
Stalky here doing a good job of shooing that Overlord away, and just going to make sure Dark doesn't get any easy scouting of this. Not wanting to confirm that he is going for this build order. Stats one of the guys who popularized this Oracle play. He has so many different variations on it. We even saw him follow up with a huge Adept attack against Nurtio in that series. Dark, very keen to scout this out. Coming in with this other Overlord, not really going to see anything important at all. Only now with this Overlord on the right does he finally spot that Oracle. Good scouting from Dark.
A very important piece of information. You never want an Oracle to fly into your middle line when you're not ready. He's going to be getting spores. And we see the Evolution Chamber already going down here. For Dark, that's most likely going to be for his usual +1 melee attack upgrades, which, if you're going into Banelings, helps tremendously for these guys to do more damage. Down the line, if he goes for Pneumatized Carapace, he can actually drop some of those Banelings onto those mineral lines like you talked about. And if you can queue multiple of these drops at once to hit at the exact same time, it's actually incredibly hard for Protoss to react on time and make sure they save their probes in the middle lines.
For now, this Oracle already very well deflected that scouting from Dark. Very important, but Stats carefully hasn't taken any damage beyond the shields, which will regenerate. He's going to come in, finally finds a drone kill, and does get on out of there, just being slightly bruised.
Baneling Nest going down now for Dark. I like that he's been working on his creep spread very actively out of 1 creep tumor very intensely. He's actually almost reached the middle of the map here already with this, on a map where the rush distance is not necessarily that long. This could play a huge role down the line because you have to clean that up to eventually attack into a Zerg. Otherwise, they're going to be pretty fast on creep and able to get much better engagement than off creep.
Very powerful opening here from Dark. Recognizing that Oracle opening has allowed him to skip an early Baneling Nest. No Roach Warren down, and he's got a very fast melee upgrade while droning very hard. So great response from Dark so far, but Stats, he's still hunting. He's still looking for these drone kills. So far has not really found a lot, but here we go. Finally grabbing a couple of those exposed drones on the gas geyser. Gets a little bit of damage done.
And air weapons +1, an additional Stargate, and a fleet beacon here on the way for Stats, who wants to play with some mass carriers and mass air here in game number 1 already. He wants to set up the pace for this best of 5 series here up against Dark.
This is the map to do it. Going for carriers on here is so powerful because you only have to defend that 1 front area that I was talking about earlier, you can mass cannons up there and really hang on to that. So going to be very interesting to see how Stats chooses to do this. He does have a Twilight Council and a Forge going on at the same time, so looks like a hybrid carrier with ground support style from the Protoss player.
Yeah, Dark though, he's been left undisturbed. He starts a 6 minutes hive pick. This is one of the fastest that you will ever see in StarCraft 2. The 4th base on the gold is on the way.
What is it for, though? What could that be for so early, Todd? Maybe Vipers or Ultralisks?
We saw Nurture earlier play against Mass Air and really try to use a lot of Infestors with Neural Parasites. It didn't work out that well, I would say, for him, even though he won a couple games here and there. And I feel like in some of those games, what was missing was maybe the Neural Parasite. So Dark, if he can get Infestors to synergize with that, it would be great for him. Obviously, you can go for Ultras if you have ground upgrades as well to go for some counterattacks, but I would be spending some gas that maybe he can't afford to spend.
Not a massive income for Dark by any means. Stats with these Oracles has managed to do little bits of damage here and there, and only now does Dark finally take a small worker lead. We do see a Spire on the way for the Zerg player as well. Double upgrades. Of course, Zerg sometimes can play a slow game against carriers where they avoid fighting them and they start to counterattack and base trade and really avoid engaging into those carriers front on. But that's a very long-term game plan. Not really something I would have expected to be in Dark's playbook.
Stats is just so good, man. He's been having a perfect so far. He's killed 21 units and lost none. These two Oracles, they've been worth their weight in gold here for sure.
Oh, we got the Mothership Core on the way as well. This is really cool. We're going to be seeing that huge air army building up for Stats. Of course, the Mothership going to be able to cloak all friendly units around it. Doesn't really do much beyond that, but you cannot undersell just how powerful that is as a tool.
The choice of going for Adepts as ground support is very curious, because from that position, it kind of seems like Stats would have been able to get away with just massing air like a pure air army, maybe add High Templars later. But I think he wanted to be safe in taking that 4th base earlier than otherwise. The thing about that is that Banelings, they counter Adepts on the ground pretty well, so he's going to have to make sure he doesn't clump those guys up and takes a good engagement whenever that engagement finally happens, which might not be before a very long time. If you're Dark here, you're dead scared of all these mass carriers, you get a ton of spores and you make sure you don't actually fight without the spores a lot of the time. And Ultralis Cavern not going to be on the way. We've got the first 7 Corruptors on the way as well, and we could be in for a long game, guys.
This is actually so exciting because both players are playing very peculiar ways here. They're both playing for this long, slow game, but a lot of it becomes about information and mind games right now. How exactly do they both choose to deal with each other's style? Stats here you can see playing for the mega late game. He's just expanding across the map, trying to secure bases and build up not just carriers, but also a ground army. He has a Robo. I think he's got a Templar Archives now as well. So he's building a mixed army. Even if Dark overwhelms the air with Corruptors, he can actually rebuild a ground army and potentially swap out and totally trick Dark with a Remax. Of course, that's many minutes down the line, but that is something which might pop into play.
Stats is covering all of his bases. Already when I saw him going into Kairos, I was wondering if we were maybe going to see some drops headed towards the main. Somehow Stats seems to be getting ready for this. One Carrier and one Void Ray will move back in position to make sure he can actually defend against this. And it's only Zerglings inside of these Overlords, Big.
Wow, very good defense so far by Stats. The depths underneath it, the Void Ray and the Carrier are going to blast this out of the sky and attack on the 4th base at the same time, though. Zerglings coming in. The cannons were just quite not finished, and already 10 probes are going to go down as Stats' Sword catches a few Zerglings, but the rest of the Protoss army way out of position. A lot of Adepts have to come back to defend this.
Yeah, I thought Stats might recall for this, but he's just going to use the Adepts that he has to make sure he can clean up. The Corruptors in the main are going to take out the Nexus very quickly here. Stats has to react.
Caustic Spray coming in, but he has to evacuate. Of course, he did already snap a carrier with those Corruptors. Dark coming in from all angles, burrowing Zerglings in the main base as well. Dark is trying to find the openings in Stats' armor. He's starting to get little pieces of damage, but he wants to find more.
And Stats really hasn't lost that much here, I think. In terms of army, he's lost absolutely nothing to this, so this might trigger a counter-attack as he closes in on basically being maxing out. And remember, with the amount of gateways and the upgrades that he's got on the ground, he he can maybe just get a War Prism, follow his Mothership with it, and reinforce straight into the fight against a Zerg that will be losing a lot of units very quickly.
Fascinating style here from Dark. You can see him massing up static defense in the middle of the map. His creep spreading everywhere, expanding to all corners of the map. He knows this Protoss army is so powerful, and this is why movement seems to be his solution to it. Constant counterattacks coming in from the sides, using Burrow to prolong the threat, and he's going for Ultralisks, Corruptors, and Vipers. This is going to be a very mobile composition where he looks to counterattack all over the place. The moment Stats pulls out of position, he's going to jump in and abduct some of those carriers, that Mothership core, out of the army. His whole goal is to catch Stats in between defending bases.
Yeah, remember that spores don't cost supply. You can just use those to complement your army. Just abduct those air units straight into those. The ground army, though, of Stats kind of worries me here. For Dark, who's only on mostly a ton of links, and he sacrificed all of his Banelings. It's only 2 Infestors, so if he gets caught out of position just one time, these Adepts could actually kill a lot of drones in one of the bases maybe. Stats now realizes what he's gonna have to go up against in terms of static.
Some nice little pickups. He's getting this movement going. He's looking to pull Stats out of position. He wants to find more damage with these abducts.
Ultras dying to photon cannons doesn't happen every single day, but here, that's what's gonna happen here for now. He's actually remaking more Ultras, a little bit curious there. I think Dark just wants to continue on attacking in multiple places, especially that 4th base has been a huge focus on the left-hand side because he knows that Stats can't leave too many units there. Mostly gonna rely on these cannons, which against upgraded units become a lot worse the later stages we go into the game.
Ultralisks and 3-3 Cracklings are going to be so powerful. At the moment, it's 3-1 upgrades for the Zerg. These just shred through units like Adepts. They shred through cannons. Dark here has a massive income, so he can definitely afford to trade a little bit poorly here. He's just got to find openings on Stats economy.
And this is the real danger. He has Stats on the right-hand side. He's posturing forward with the War Prism. Dark completely out of position. He could start losing a lot of drones here and there. Zergling run by somehow happens.
Gets Zerglings into the main. Ultralisks looking for an opening, but at the same time, he is losing drones on that other base. Everything is getting very messy right now. It's a real test of both players multitasking. Looks like the Burrow will be good to defend those drones for now. Dark going to try and chase down this War Prism with those Corruptors.
That run by was so important, because if that hadn't happened, Stats would have been looking at the bottom right-hand side and maybe shaded some Adepts towards the 3rd base of Dark, while warping in maybe some Zealots onto that 4th base to try and snipe it. Like I said, Cannon's not the best unit against Ultras, but they buy enough time for the army to come back and clean those up.
Got to be a little bit critical of this move. It's not paired up with any other pressure. I do love this Ultralisk running away to the south to hide, but he's got to try and pick Stats apart. He can't just attack in one location. Dark has got to multi-prong. He's got to attack from multiple angles at once. Otherwise, Stats here, he's already getting out of control. He's getting a big mineral and gas bank, Todd. He's got 72 workers as well.
Yeah, both players are exactly where they want to be economy-wise. Now it's just about refining the army that they have. And obviously, these spores will play a huge role here. Dark's composition, try and win this game. He has to be patient though. Moving off creep and without these spores is going to be really hard. Maybe he needs to keep on just kind of creep spreading and then move toward this middle base to try and contest that, because the bottom gold base actually can't be contested. There is actually creep spread there that couldn't be taken from Protoss just yet. And Stats is going to lack mobility there. And Dark for now cannot really exploit that other than with Zergling run bys, which he's actually still attempting. There is no unit in the wall at the natural, but he's going to go for the 4th base.
Lots of photon cannons here, but the probe line is exposed, and these Zerglings do massive damage. They are going to take out that cannon behind the base, starting to work on the Nexus as well. Takes damage very quickly. These Zerglings dish it out. But in the end, only a couple of probes and a cannon go down. Good defense by Stats.
Might have gone to the Nexus if he clicked on it immediately. That one Ultra. That is a one-man job there.
Zealots warping in on the right-hand side. Stats just wants to keep up the aggression a little bit, buying a bit of time for himself. But Dark, I mean, he's banking up a lot. He's got a lot of Corruptors and Vipers, but these units don't really gain value with time, and every second that goes by, you can see stats upgrades ticking over. He's getting better upgrades for his air, his ground, his plasma shields. He's adding in tech like Dark Templar Shrine. He's getting energy on his High Templar for storms. I feel like Stats is reaching that perfect army point. And in a direct engagement in the late game, Protoss does have the advantage over Zerg. The pressure is on Dark to make something happen before Stats has that perfect army. And oh man, looking at that, Todd, it might already be too late.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to take on this army, obviously. I think Dark can only rely on the spores. Maybe a couple good abducts, parasitic fungals might be able to do it. Stats is actually going to attack into this.
Nice fungals, abducts go down on the mothership and a group of carriers. He recalls, but he only recalls the few units that had already been abducted. More and more carriers go down. The abducts are beautiful. The ultras just shred through the ground army. The Corruptors and Vipers jumping in. Great focus fire from Stats. Actually takes down about 8 Vipers there. And that was a good trade at the tail end of that fight.
A very uncharacteristic mistake here from Stats, which might cost him the game. He lost a lot of important units that are very hard to replace. He moved in that position almost as if he thought that the entire army of Dark was headed for the main to try and defend against the War Prison, but that wasn't the case. Dark was ready, he punishes, and then behind this, I mean, even though the mothership survived, it's slow on hit points. He's remaking Void Race right now to try and counter the Corruptors, but those are going to be terrible against the Spore Crawlers, which are now in the middle of the map here, towards that middle base of Stats, which is also important.
Masses of Zerglings and Ultralisks on that production tab. Dark wants to get rid of this base. He's finally found that weakness in Stats' armor. Knocks him down, 13 probes. He wants to finish off this base, but he doesn't have any Vipers left. He's just gonna have to engage front on. He's very wary of that Archon splash, but the carrier falls. The Void Rays start to go down. The Ultra Zerglings and Banelings overwhelming. Dark takes out the remains of Stats Force, killing these individual Void Rays that are reinforcing. I think Dark might have done it.
He's crushing through. Look at the supply peak. The bank as well, non-existent here for Stats. He spent everything that he had, and with the middle base being gone, this is gonna be hit. GG. Dark takes game number 1.
So patient from the Zerg player. He just waits for that moment. That 1 point of weakness lands the fungal growth all over the Protoss army and abducts all of those powerful capital ships, forces the recall, and the moment the Protoss army was split in half, he jumped on top of it and he got way too far ahead. Just fantastic patience out of our Zerg.
Very uncharacteristic mistake here out of Stats. Both players were doing everything right. It felt like up until the point he just moved towards the spores, got abducted, fungaled, and from there, everything went wrong. What was really missing, I think, for Stats is a couple of oracles doing their job in those revelations, because that's usually how you keep tabs on where the Zerg army exactly is at and whether it's safe to actually posture forward. And really surprised that actually went down like that. Maybe lost patience a little bit. He was maybe a little bit bothered as well by the way Dark was so sound defensively, because even this War Prism harassment that he went for, almost every single Zerg player out there would die to this, but somehow Dark took minimal damage from that, defending exactly as he needed to, and just nothing was going Stats' way in terms of actually being able to achieve something and being aggressive, other than in the very start where the Oracles actually did some damage here and there, killed a bunch of drones, which, I mean, if you're going to kill drones like this and then go into a very long game, it doesn't really matter, right? Zerg will catch back up, and Dark was actually the one with a much bigger bank.
He had been mining off a crazy work account for a long time, and he didn't even need to use that bank in the end. He closed out that game number 1 in very commanding fashion. The Zerg player has taken a 1-0 lead. We are going in to map number 2 of this semi-final between Stats and Dark. And spawning here on Newkirk Precinct in the bottom left-hand side, our red Zerg player, 1 game up. He is Dark!
His opponents, many saw him as the favorite going into this match, playing as the Blue Protoss. It is Splice Gaming Stats! Going for a standard build by the look of things, just gateway down the ramp, quick scout as well, wants to make sure he knows exactly what he's up against. And Dark with actually the quick extractor into a spawning pole, so he's going to be rushing that speed.
This is a very flexible Zerg opening. I love the respect that Stats is showing so far with his pylon scout. Both games does want to make sure there's no 12 full rush. He wants to make sure Dark doesn't sneak over with some aggressive builds. And this is so important because if you look at the history of these two players in the past, Dark has defeated Stats when he's been able to surprise him with some rushes. And this specific opening is one which has caused Stats so much trouble. Last time they played, Dark did a few Roach, Zergling all-in attacks and rolled over Stats in a commanding fashion 1 year ago in that Star League Finals. You can tell it's still in the back of Stats' mind. He's going to be very careful about that.
Yeah, definitely improved a lot since then, though. Sure, defensively, nowadays he's very, very sound. With the way the previous game went, by the way, like how passive they were playing, how they were trying to build the perfect army and everything, UK Precinct is one of those maps where you see a lot of split map situations. If we were to go in a similar scenario, things would be very, very interesting because I think Stats would do things a lot better. And also crease spread wise on this map, you have a lot of avenues to cover. It's much harder. Like it's not like you reach the middle base and then that's where you will be, like it was in the previous game. So one part of me quite hope we see this kind of play. But Stats all alike on this map, he knows to be decisive. Sometimes he will throw in those 3 base timings where he just kills Zergs and makes it look easy with the force fields and the exact right amount of units. And the perfect mix.
Famous for making that big charge lot Archon Immortal attack off an Archon drop opening. Very famous as he's defeated so many Zergs with it. Definitely one we've seen him do a lot of times on this map. Could be on the cards. I definitely don't think we're going to see something like that crazy carrier rush last game, though. That was really a special build for that map.
Didn't go so well with it either. And the build that you mentioned, definitely one of his favorites on this map. I've seen him do it a lot. But it's known that he does that a lot. And if you're Dark, you just look at it like that. He already spotted the Twilight Council. Probably going to be going for a follow-up scout. And by the look of things, this is the build that Stats is going for right now. If you're Dark, you just kind of get ready. You're already thinking about that potential and how you're going to defend it.
This Overlord, it wants to come in a little bit deeper. Looks like he's committed to the sacrifice, but he's not going in the right direction. Does change angle, spots the Robo, spots the DT Shrine. Good scouting for Dark. Of course, this is something the Zerg player almost always does recognize, and it's still a very solid build for Stats.
He saw that nothing was being made out of the Twilight Council as well, so it couldn't have been resonating glaives for a lot of adepts. The Robo now finishes. It's going to be a Warp Prism being made. Usually here you see 2 more gates so that you can warp in 4 Dark Templars as the Protoss when you finally reach across the map. But Stats is actually going to change from that and take the gases on his natural. He's only going to stay on double gateways.
We did see a really cute 2-gate variation from, I think it might have been Harstem in the group stages. I know Stats talks a lot to these foreign players. They all share build orders and chat about it. And what we found with that build is you still end up hitting with the same double Archon drop timing because you can warp in 2 DTs earlier and then another 2 DTs a bit later. So this is a really cool adjustment. There are 2 more gateways coming down now as well. So he might end up just going for the 4 DT warp in. We'll have to see how that one goes. Of course, Dark behind this. He's got his lair almost finished. He wants to get an Overseer out very early. He's skimping on Spore Crawlers. So he wants to be very efficient in his defense.
Yeah, build order-wise, you can tell that Dark has put a lot of thought into this and is trying to counter this build as much as possible. The units will come out perfectly on time, I think. He's supposed to have a couple more roaches, but with the Queen there, he should be fine.
Yeah, nice micro here from both players. Stats just going to pick up those DTs and be pushed back after cleaning up a few Zerglings. Not a massive amount of damage, but Dark here, he had to build a lot of units. He had to make that Overseer. So Stats forcing a reaction already and now getting ready for the Archon drop follow-up.
Yeah, which, I mean, when you have this many roaches, shouldn't be that much of a danger. Usually you'd want to have maybe a couple more. He only actually leaves 3 towards the main base here, those Dark, because he didn't know where the Archons were going to go. So if he targets on some of these drones here, Stats might be able to get some of those.
1 drone does go down. Dark with a great pullback on those wounded roaches. Does deny most of the damage. So far, the response from Dark has been as close to perfect as you could hope for. And he's, interestingly enough, going for roach speed very quickly, along with a +1 upgrade. So I really love the power of Roach Hydra timing attacks, or even Mass Roach Ravager attacks in this current sort of meta that we're seeing from a lot of Korean players. But stats, he's got Immortals on the way behind this.
Yeah.
He's got Sentries. He's got a Forge down. Looks like he's going to be playing a very solid game back at home.
Yeah, sometimes we see him cut probes earlier at 44 to 46, get charged, and then with 3 Immortals, he just attacks already as the War Prism across the map, goes for the kill. But this time, I don't think he's going to be like that, especially because of the Forge. It's a huge tell that he might want to play a little bit more passive, maybe get that +1, even though he hasn't started it yet. And he might attack regardless, just because his army packs such a punch earlier on in the game like this. Adds on a couple Stalkers here to his composition, +1 now going to start. And I love that Dark actually took the left-hand side third base. A lot of Zergs, they take the one towards the right-hand side of their natural. Yeah, this one, which is much easier to attack into and force field.
This is going to be much harder for Stats to frontal push. And so far, Stats has to be a little bit annoyed at how good Dark's defense of the early pressure has been. Stats starting to warp in Stalkers, but no blink done just yet, I don't think. And yeah, wow, gearing up for a big push, but the Master Oak Ravager is going to be perfect against this sort of attack. I think Stats, he really needs to see just how many Roaches and Ravagers are. His Hallucinated Phoenix is coming in, but I don't think he's spotted it just yet. Now he sees. He knows there's a big army out of Dark, and that's going to have to change up his goal. Second Robo goes down immediately. He's chrono boosting out more Immortals. He is very worried about this army from Dark.
Stats is the one that needs to play defensively. A lot of drones were cut for this. 57 drones to 61 probes right now. You don't need any more workers, Stats. You need units to make sure that you survive. And Dark, it feels like he's committed to this, but he's still going to go into some sort of Baneling nest, maybe for some Baneling drops.
Ooh, snipe down the Observer with a Corrosive Bile. Stats not looking there. Dark with a cheeky maneuver shuts down some of Stats' vision on the map. Interestingly, Dark, he really committed to a huge amount of army there. He was hoping to surprise Stats, crush his army on the map, and then just win the game. So he actually cut a lot of workers out, but he's only re-droned now quite a bit later on. And now Stats even going to do a little bit of damage in the mineral line. I feel like these openings have gone so well for Stats now. He has just had such an efficient build-up.
Yeah, this is so annoying here for Dark to have to deal with. He has to pull back drones. He loses 3 of them. Stats going to evacuate before losing anything, other than those few Zealots that I don't think he really minds losing too much. And Stats is still moving out. I'm a little bit surprised. Because the more he waits, the better his army gets against Darks, who's now getting centrifugal hooks, so Baneling speed to be able to support his Ravagers. Banelings synergize very, very well with Ravagers because force fields counter Banelings, but Ravagers can cancel out these force fields.
This is an insane Ravager count that we see here. So many Ravagers and Zerglings with Bane speed on the way. No doubt Banelings will be the icing on top of the cake as this game goes on. But Dark, he's not building a massive economy. He's barely using his 4th base. He's starting to add on more drones now, but by no means is he massively ahead of the Protoss player, like we often see. Often we'll see this huge swarming Zerg army, Protoss player barely defending. In this game, Stats is actually comfortable to take a 4th base.
Yeah, the Ravager count is actually pretty impressive. It's 15, but listen to this. We've got 7 Immortals and soon to be 9. And in this kind of composition here, when you're facing this many Banelings, as soon as Storm completes, you take a huge advantage. We saw Harstem with some great micro in one of his earlier games against Sort of, killing basically everything that was being thrown at him quite convincingly. I think that was on this map as well. But this time around, I'm not sure Storm's going to be ready. Probably not. So he's going to have to rely mostly on the force fields here.
Dark constantly forcing APM out of Stats by just throwing those corrosive piles, trying to hit the War Prism. It is time. Dark wants to hit. He wants to hit now. Bane speed is done. He's not giving time for Storm to finish. The force fields are good, but will they be enough? Dark charges into the Protoss army. Corrosive Bile landing all over everything. The Storm is still not finished. Those High Templar in the back are worthless right now. The overcharge going down, but the Immortals are falling very rapidly. It's just Ravagers versus Immortals and Archons right now. Charge Lots reinforcing, joining the fray, and it looks like Stats has just barely managed to hang on.
It looked very worrying for a second. A couple Zealots sneak across the map thanks to the War Prism. And actually, he lost a lot of Immortal here. Just before we checked out the left-hand side of the map, I think a bunch of Corrosive Bile were about to land on like 3 or 4 of those Immortals. That's all of a sudden down to one last single Immortal. He's got 2 more about to come out, sure, but Dark, with the amount of hatcheries that he has, not missing a single inject, he's just going to make a ton of units and keep on going for this. It's harder for Protoss to replenish their important units there. Army counts 71 for Dark, 63 for Stats, who now is about to have a couple storms to walk with here on his 3 High Templars.
Dark is securing a 5th base behind this, but he wants to keep on hitting the Protoss. He doesn't want to just let him mine. He wants to keep trading before the Protoss has time to build up lots of storm energy, before he has time to build up another wall of Immortals.
Zealous across the map still doing some damage, forced an evacuation of one of those bases. Dark must be getting a little bit desperate. 4th base already up here for Stats, who's gonna storm on top of this army here.
Oh, those Banelings on the top, not doing a lot, crashing into Immortals and Archons, but the High Templar, Banelings get on the High Templar, force them to morph into Archons. There's Zerglings in the mineral line. Probes are starting to fall. It looks like Dark might have done it. He's breaking his way through, but no, more and more Immortals and Archons rallying in. The Charge Lots get on top of these Ravagers, and Dark cannot lose those Ravagers. They are so expensive.
Some Zealots catch this new base of Dark that's being made here across the map, and he's on the chase right now. He might try to go just simply for the fight. No, realizes that there probably is too much here from Dark already. So Stats gonna pull back and start working on replenishing his army count, especially with these Immortals here. You want to make sure you have enough of these guys. The split so far, he's been engaged into so quickly here, has Stats, that he hasn't been able to split very efficiently. Like the first fight was the one where he started going wrong, because force fields were being broken by these Ravagers, so he's gonna have to start doing better with that. And the upgrades pick, they really worry me here for Stats. He's only on +1 attack upgrades against a Zerg on 1-and-1 attack, melee, and missile, who's getting +2 melee right now and +1 carapace and getting an infestation pit. Dark is just an absolute beast here so far in this match.
Dark has shifted gears a little bit, added another 10 to 15 drones after that last fight as well. He's actually a little bit weak to a counterattack, but he knows that Stats doesn't have that information. Dark going to continue to try and buy time with these Baneling run-bys, but that cannon, standing guard, deflects it for now. And Dark, he just wants to buy time. He wants to let that money kick in. He's got a huge income right now.
Zealous not going to be able to do too much, just get 2 drones. Then get blown up by those Banelings. Dark's army is just really, really hard to deal with. You need a lot of High Templars, a lot of Archons to actually properly tank against them. And by the time Stats can finally replenish, fight against this, then there is going to be new units to go into for Dark. Tier 3 units with the Hive that he has on the way.
Stats.
+1 air weapon actually starts with his target, so already transitioning.
Stats' next challenge here is to take a 5th base. How will he secure that against Dark, whose creep is past the halfway point on the map, whose army is roaming all over the map? These charge lot counterattacks, they're trying to clear up portions of the map. This is a nice one, cleaning up these Zerglings that were working on his back rocks. Stats vying for a little bit of that map control, and he has dropped that 5th base, but now he is much more spread out. The next time Dark pushes into him, he's gonna have to meet that army in the middle of the map.
So funny, that War Prism on the top left-hand side is a huge throwback from when the Stats played against Nurtio, and the War Prism just kept on flying in, warp in.
Oh,
Go out, fly back in, warp in. Go out, rinse and repeat. And it looks like Stats is going to keep on going here with this. He's trying to hit in multiple places at once. His main army is at the bottom. No mothership with it to recall. So you can't overextend there, because if you get fully surrounded or engaged into, that could be your entire army gone in an instant here for Stats.
Dark has a Spire about to finish. He has a Hive on the way. He's cleaning up these Archons in the north of the map. Dark actually being reasonably cost efficient for this stage of the game. And he may begin a Broodlord transition, but Stats so prepared for the late game. Already is going up to 3 starports and a fleet beacon. He's looking around the map, trying to maybe clear up a bit of creep, slow down Dark's map control. Both players settling into this late game. The next big engagement is going to be very decisive. Both players not wanting to throw this game away. They want to find that correct engagement.
I mean, against 58 Banelings, it's very discouraging to step on creep, as it is for Dark to step off creep. They might meet each other halfway here, though.
Lots of High Templar with full energy in this army. There's going to be about 8 storms when the fight does end up happening. And I do wonder what air units we're going to see. It looks like Tempest's on the way for Stats. He's definitely preparing for that Broodlord swap, the one weakness of this Immortal Archon Storm army.
There is absolutely no worry to have about Ultras when you have this many Immortals. He actually has an observer in the main base of Dark, so he sees that the Hive finished. So yeah, it's just about kind of guessing. Hasn't been able to see the greater spire that's actually in the natural. The main base and natural, I have to say, of Dark are very exposed. There is no static defense at all. If Stats started using a couple War Prism to send units there, might be able to do really well, especially since his upgrades are now finally catching up. He's halfway through getting to that +3 ground upgrades.
The numbers are starting to look a lot better for Stats here. He's actually ahead in supply as he maxes out right now. Of course, Dark with the Greatest Spire about to finish his beginning. Corruptors wanting to add Broodlords. The only thing I feel that Dark really still has in his advantage at this point is the map control, the creep spread. However, he hasn't been able to turn that into an advantage, but hold that thought. Ravages and Lings wrapping around the defense on the north, grabs a few Zealots for free, but does have to pull back.
Dark being so patient here with his army. A lot of Zergus that felt like their army is going to start expiring or be less as good momentarily and would have overextended.
One Immortal will go down there.
He steps on creep for just 1 second, and that's Dark skew to sending a couple Banelings. That was the exact right amount as well, I think, to sacrifice. He still has quite a few left over that if he gets attacked, he's actually going to be safe. Obviously, he wants to reach Broodlords. Keep on creep spreading. Creep spread is such a danger there. It gives so much vision and speed to the Zerg army. You can also...
Banelings coming in on this 5th base at the same time. Storm does shut all of those down. Stats on top of the pro pool. Kills about 10 Banelings there for free. But look at this, Dark! He's preparing masses of Ling drops in the south. He knows that in a front-on engagement where all of Stats' focus is right there, he will not win. But if he can pull Stats apart, if he can drop these Zerglings and shred the production in the main, he might find an opening.
Yeah, those are 3-2 Lings that we're talking about with Adrenal Glands, and Stats is completely out of position. He might just recall here, I think, against this, because otherwise he's going to lose his entire main very quickly. And remember, that's where his targets and the fleet beacon are.
Oh, this is perfect timing, Todd. Right as he pushes onto creep, if he recalls, his bases in the middle are going to be very exposed. How does he handle this?
I think he's going to just try and warp in Zealots. Like, they've got good upgrades now, but the main base still taking a ton of damage. This might make Stacks desperate and move forward a little bit too far.
His army is picking away at the Corruptors. He's got that Revelation down. The Broodlords are still dangerous here. His Mothership Core is nice, but Stats' army getting into disarray. Dark pounces on the opportunity. Banelings, Ravagers, Corruptors, and Broodlords all engaging at once. The Tempests are falling. Oh my gosh, the Corrosive Bile is massive. Lands all over those Tempests. Both armies tearing each other apart. But at the end of the day, it looks like Dark survives. He pushes back Stats' army, and his main base is in shambles. Dark somehow makes it happen in the late game once again.
He's still traded a lot though, and has a better bank behind this. So even though Dark is ahead in supply right now, most of his units also kind of survived, like the important ones, the Broodlords in particular. So we're in a very interesting position where Stats has lost his very important Stargates. He's remaking gateways here instead of replacing those.
Still Broodlords alive right now.
He's gonna try to counter with ground, I think, hoping that Dark will be on too many Corruptors that will be useless in the fight against ground units. I mean, sure, they will clean up the air, but it's only one Tempest and one Mothership.
This could be dangerous for Stats. Building a lot of Blink Stalkers when your opponent's building Zerglings and Ultras with 3-2 upgrades. That is a dangerous thing that he can do there. I don't know if this one's going to work out for Stats. More and more Stalkers are warping in. He's rebuilding that Templar Archives. He has a huge bank right now. But the fact that he isn't rebuilding the Stargates, he's not rebuilding those Tempests, this is very worrying. Really, Stats has to rely on this one army to make it work. And the Stalkers are just lackluster units in the late game. They're maneuverable, they're flexible, but they just do not deal a lot of damage.
That's maybe in trouble there if he's not able to build the ideal army composition to deal with Darks. It feels like Darks just is doing a little bit better with that every single time. He gets the right amount of every single units that he needs to get. And especially not being able to do any damage across the map with those prisms, or like not enough compared to an unusual PvZ on this map or in this situation, has been a big problem here, I think, for Stats.
Stats coming in here with a nice little drop, but there's plenty of Spine Crawlers and Spores all over the place. He's pushing in the middle, these Stalkers, Archons, Immortals, and High Templar starting to push in. Archons on the south, going to clean up quite a few Zerglings before they do go down, trying to focus as many units as he can, but Stats here now swaps into Void Rays. Okay. This is a little bit interesting because he doesn't really have that much supply. A few Void Rays will do well versus the Corruptors, but since he's not really fighting an air battle anyway, I'm not really sure what his decision is here. He's gonna have to somehow make this work with Stalkers against an Ultralist, Baneling, Broodlord, and Corruptor army. Dark pushing in. He wants to edge his way forwards.
Nice snipe here, blinking forward, sniping one of the Bulldogs. Even if some Stalkers die, he can replace them quickly.
This is a big attack from Dark. Rolling over the top, the Corruptors snipe down the Mothership and the Tempest, but all of the Ultralisks go down. Those Broodlords trying to get out of dodge. The Archon's in hot pursuit, and a massive Stalker warp in, closing on from behind. Banelings come in from reserve. They start to do some damage to the Stalkers, but most of them are still standing. They do have another blink ready, but he knows the reinforcements are out for Dark. He can't chase any further. Dark preserves the Broodlords.
Yeah, actually, that was very important for Stats to actually get those. I think if he had gone forwards, the links weren't out just yet for Dark. He might have been able to trade a couple Stalkers for these 4 very important Broodlords. Now Stats pulling back both players to replenish. Throws it down before dying.
Cannons and Zealots will clean this up along with the Stalkers blinking back. Stats here, he's still got money. He's got 6 bases. Even though a lot of these fights have been favoring Dark a little bit, considering he's been mining more money, Stats is still mining off his entire half of the map. And the longer that goes for, Protoss efficiency will eventually begin to win out. He's already been 4,000 resources lost more effective than Dark. So Dark, he's going to need to actually make something. He can't just keep taking these trades.
That was a funny tab there, the units lost.
Yeah, it's like everything has died in this game, and about 300 of each unit.
I think Dark is starting to realize that there is too much ground from Stats and not enough air to counter the Broodlord, so he's focusing on the Broodlord count, and his army is looking super scary right now. Interestingly, because they've kept on trading, and in particular, they've been spending all of their gas to replenish their army counts, the armor upgrades were skipped for the most part, plus 3 is missing here. Carapace for Dark, and not a single ground armor upgrade for Stats so far this game. It's all been about the +3 attack and the +1 shields.
Those upgrades definitely are a big factor as the game goes on, but lots and lots of Tempests have now spilled out onto the field. Stats replenishing his anti-Broodlord force. These Broodlords, though, not giving him much time to get in position. They're going to start sieging this base in the south. Meanwhile, Zerglings flooding up into the north. A Dark Templar warping in for the defense. Now, the Banelings, if they don't get it, then the DT will eventually hold on, but he might lose a lot of economy before then.
Yeah, Dark is still being a little bit timid here towards that south base, but at the top he's doing fantastic, already killing 10 probes. That Immortal gonna go down as well. And even though, like you say, DTs are gonna clean up eventually, losing this many probes is always gonna be bad.
Stats could use that to his favor a little bit in that he can replenish with army units and have a stronger max, but
you want to have the bank first. We saw a couple of split map situations where players didn't have the bank yet, and huge fungal is gonna land on top of this air army.
Double fungal all over that army. Corruptors grab a couple of snipes, but Dark doesn't have the anti-air numbers to follow through. The Broodlords, though, sniping out this base on the south. They take the Nexus down.
It's a big problem. There is only one single observer out, and it's at the top side of the map, doing nothing, not helping this air army being protected and detecting against these burrowed infestors there.
Oh, Zerglings everywhere for Dark. He's shredding Stats' economy right now. Stats, he's managed to clean up a lot of army units, but the important Broodlords have survived. Dark, he's not maxed out anymore. He's chewed through his gas bank. But look at Stats. His economy is in tatters. His income is way down. Now Dark can afford to pull back, rebuild a little bit, knowing that he's handicapped Stats' ability to rebuild.
But considering the amount of mineral patches that are left on the side of Stats, I don't think it's the biggest of problems that he's lost a couple of probes. Like, he replenished a few, he remade a bunch. Resources lost incredibly close between the both players, 45,000 to 43,000. How close has this game been? They've been trading back and forth, not pulling any punches.
Taking out all those work has really shifted things back in Dark's favor in that unit's lost. Taking out 54 probes against 25 drones this game. But Stats, he's still got a strong army. He's got +3 ship weapons on the way. He's rebuilding that 6th Nexus. And I'd say the only real weakness of the composition here for Stats is its immobility. He's got Tempests, Mothership, Void Rays. These units are great in front on engagements, but they do struggle to cover the very far north and the south at the same time.
And I think he finally got super fed up with Lynx running into his north base. So he left a couple Templars there, made a bunch of cannons, and he's going to focus on the south one with his main army. He's actually leaving a lot of Stalkers as well as the Archons up there. Some Revelations are missing. Like he used some on the Zerglings, Banelings, and Ultras, but it's really the Air Army and the Broodlords that you want to be following. But because there are spores there, it makes it that much harder for Stats to be able to keep tabs on the Zerg army here, I think, right now.
Broodlords and Corruptors and Vipers just veering around this map. They are looking for an avenue to make this work. Both players playing some of the most patient StarCraft we've seen in a long time. This is not your average Zerg versus Protoss, but both of these guys, the absolute top of their respective races, are showing an entirely new way of playing this game.
Dark side of the map is almost mined out. Like you look at his bank right now, he's not going to get much more minerals than that. Remember, one of the most important stats in a split map situation is going to be the resources lost, and actually pretty equal. I think Stats is a little bit ahead. He's killed a little bit more on that. So unless the opponent comes and mines on your side of the map, and that really never happens, only in my games, then that stats is still going to be very important. And right now, our Protoss player is doing better with that. He has to secure that base, and I think Dark knows that he has to be the one that makes something happen right now, and that's what he's doing right there. He needs to bring the spores, though.
Yeah, it's a couple of Broodlords going north. They see a whole army of Stalkers and Archons. I think Dark's going to go for a push on that north side. He's going to try and trap those units using the Broodlords to bait them in. Lings, Banes, and Ultras coming in at the same time, trying to take the engagement. Good Archon hits. Great blink back from Stats, though. Going to disengage until he can regenerate those shields. Once again, efficiency, just the forte of Stats here.
He's widening the gap. 50,000 resources lost to almost 45 now.
And the income is just running out for Dark. These bases, look at this. There's only about 8 mineral patches left on his side of the map. His gases are going to go for a while longer, but his minerals are down in the dumps. This is effectively Dark's last big army, which he has to make something happen with. And since we see Stats there with an equal work account, 158 army supply, cannon storms, as well as the map hack revolution.
They have the exact same supply in Walkers and Army, actually.
That's actually insane. The revelation here, Stats can see everything from a mile away because he just keeps tagging these units.
Stats is missing a huge chunk of army across the map. He has to recall out of there, otherwise it's going to be a disaster, potentially.
Storms! Storms all over the Zerg! He does recall after shredding away a lot of those Corruptors.
A huge chunk of army from Stats was missing, and across the map, killing one of those bases of Dark right now. Looking to try and counter-attack. I think he was just trying to buy some time, and I think that's going to force Dark back to try and clean that up. But he might lose his one base, where he has still quite a few minerals here at the top in the meantime.
Oh, Stats going very risky here. He's going to go deep with this army. It might get cornered. He is going to take out some of Dark's mining, but if this army gets trapped by those Broodlords, there is going to be no escape.
Stats is replacing the probes he just lost with more army, by the way. Like, their armies just keep on getting bigger and bigger. And Dark at this point is completely broke against the Stats, who's still mining quite a bit more. Like, income right now is 1,600 to 125.
Dark knows he needs more money. He's going to start mining from Stats' side of the map. It's not just your ladder games, Todd. Even here are the best players in the world. We're going to see him try to take that base. Stats, he's going to start edging forward. He wants to push back that creep. He senses that he's strong right now. He knows he can start to bully Dark out of the center of the map, but he has to stop this expansion going up. I think if Dark takes that, he actually does buy himself more time. He allows himself to be quite passive for a while. So, I mean, the longer he can drag this out and not be forced into taking a bad engagement into the Protoss, the better it is for Dark.
The spellcasters in each player's army are going to be the key here to winning this game. We've got 8 pretty close to full energy Eye Templars against 3 Infestors and 3 Vipers. These Fungal and Parasitic Bomb he's gonna have to make them count. I don't think that Abducts achieve that much unless you can catch the Mothership and get rid of that.
Tempest's coming in here, a big Protoss army. I do love that single carrier in the mix, because why not? It is one of the highest damage output games in the output units in the game. Ultra's starting to counterattack though. This game's getting very weird very quickly. Zergling's gonna hit that northern base at the same time. Are we gonna go into some sort of weird base trade? I don't know. There's a lot of cannons still on Stat's side of the map.
Yeah, Stas seems to want to get rid of the tech of Dark, but since Dark is broke, I don't think he should mine too much. He's just gonna camp the one base that he's still mining a little bit from.
Stats still maintaining the army supply lead, as well as having a little bit of a bank to work with. Can add a few more units as needed. Most importantly, there's still 8 High Templar alive, whereas there's only 3 Infestors and 3 Vipers. The reason these units are so important is because they are spellcasters, they're energy units. They are going to keep on regenerating energy, and they can throw out a lot of damage without having to sacrifice themselves for it. So the real kicker in this final engagement, it's going to be Fungal. We're going to see what's it called? Parasitic Bomb and Fungal combos from the Zerg up against Storm and feedback from the Protoss. So there's going to be a real micro dance in terms of how that works. And really, I think Stats has got the better army, but he's still got to close it out. And if there's one Zerg who can come back from here, I think it is Dark.
If he can land that perfect Fungal from afar and keep those units in place, he's going to force another recall. Dark, in the meantime, keeps on mining. He needs to fight with those spores. There is, I think, no way to win without those. But Stats' army is looking so strong right now. He's got a lot of initiative as well. He can use Blink Stalkers to go forward, maybe snipe a couple units out of position if those Infestors ever were to be exposed. But they're going to be burrowed, that's the thing. Maybe some good Revelation will help keeping these Oracles, or actually, he only has 1 Oracle alive. He cannot lose that one.
Stats is pushing back the creep, edging back Dark's vision little bit by little bit. He just wants to push him back carefully. Vision is so important because it allows you to position those spellcasters correctly, allows you to land those spells, but Stats has the advantage with range. His Tempest's picking away from afar. They want to focus down those Broodlords. His army rotating around, he's cornering Dark.
2 more Infestors are being made here, and they're gonna come out from that hatchery that's being attacked. He cancels them at the last second and restarts them just on time on the other side. Dark, what a ninja. He actually made that happen on time. Stats the entire game was basically, by standing where he was standing, saying, Dark, you have to attack into me, because the more you wait, the worse he's gonna get for you. And Dark says, you know what? You're the one who's gonna have to attack into me, because I got your minerals, baby!
Those Stats has found some minerals in the top left of the map, and he's very slowly going to long distance mine that with a conga line of probes stretching halfway across the map to do that. I think there might actually be some Zerglings up there from Dark, which is going to shut down that last little bit of income. The fight going on. Fungals land all over the Protoss army. It's happening. Storms landing everywhere, blanketing the entire Zerg force. The Vipers disappear in an instant. The Protoss army standing strong. The Void Rays shredding the Corruptors apart, but there's still 24 Corruptors alive. The Void Ray overcharge has run out. The Stalkers warping in. The Broodlord still doing well. I think Dark might just barely have enough. It's going to come down to this air battle. 4 Void Rays versus 7 Corruptors. Who will win? It looks like there's just slightly too much. Zerg, Protoss, I can't even tell right now. It looks like at the end of that, Stats just barely holds on. GG. Stats brings it back. What a game. I can barely even believe what we just witnessed there. There was a moment with those Fungals where I thought Dark was going to close it out. But Stats heaves a sigh of relief. He manages to close it out. Well, guys, let's hear from the boys on the desk and their thoughts on this epic series so far.
Yes, indeed. Thank you very much, Pig, as well as Torres, of course. 2 games in, we are 1-1. And both games, especially that last one, was absolutely bonkers. I can't believe what we just watched.
These are really good Protoss versus Zergs here. That last game, it was Stats. Similar to what we've seen before in this tournament, he wins in that chess game at the very end. He gets that unit comp. It's really hard for Zerg to stop that, for Zerg to try to engage that. Stats maneuvers around that, sometimes splitting his army up, and eventually Dark doesn't have a base, wins in the big fight.
That's insane. I have no idea where to start. I mean, normally it's like, maybe you should have done a little more damage with the adapts, but like these games are like 30-minute games. There's so many clutch engagements. I'm incredibly impressed with how well Dark is playing. Stats is playing really good too, don't get me wrong, but I think game one was awesome. I think that's a rough map for Zerg as well. And I think even on Newkirk, I love the Link drop, and I'd like to see more stuff of that. Even the first timing with the Ravager Link, I think if the Warp Prism isn't that active on the other side of the map, I think the reinforcements could potentially run over Stats.
Yeah.
But Stats, obviously, once again, you said it before the series, like he's so good with his Prism, never lets it die,
Yeah.
make sure to cut off reinforcements, and that's why he stayed alive. And in the end, he got that Golden Armada army.
Yes.
It almost looked like we're watching a campaign animation trailer or something. It's like, here's the Protoss army. It's like a bunch of Tempests, Void Rays, Immortals, Archons, High Templars, and a Mothership. Woo! But it was actually the real army, and it's a really good army. Sick fights. I mean, they're both playing really well. There's no other way to put it.
I like how Dark tried to compensate for the fact that you've got a Broodlord army, it's very slow, etc., through the middle of the map. The drop down towards the bottom with the 4 Lords to get those Lings in and try and do some damage was good to try and circumvent the idea of just a stalemate in the middle of the game.
Yeah, one thing about when you get that far along in a game like this one, the Protoss' army is really scary, but it's not that mobile. So Zerg is trying to utilize the position, the sheer size of the map, the fact that pretty much the map is occupied by one player or the other. So you're trying to drop as many locations as you can, chisel them down. But if you notice, it does seem like Stats pretty much has cannons and defense everywhere. I mean, once he maxes out on units, he starts to not max out on buildings, but make a ton. So that it's really hard for Zerg to do anything.
Yeah, no, obviously, and I think the Link drop was awesome. I'd like to see more of it. Like I said, maybe even some Niduses if you have the money for it. But Newkirk often turns into these games where both players pretty much mine out their side of the map. So obviously going for Niduses, even though like 1 or 2 Niduses may not seem expensive, those things do really add up. And before you know it, you're going to need that gas. I thought it was a sick game, really fun. I definitely think there were some opportunities perhaps for Dark to take it, but Stats did a great job in hanging in there. And once again, I think the Prism kept him alive. Otherwise, there's a chance he loses that third base. The moment he loses that, I think the game is over.
Well, we could talk about game number 2 forever because of how amazing it was. But for now, we need to go to a break. And then when we are back, game number 3 here in this best of 5 between Stats and Dark.
Do you want to feel like a pro gamer? Wait no more. Greatness awaits you with Intel Extreme Masters certified PCs and notebooks. When you see unique IEM certified stickers on the outside, you will find high-grade components with Intel Core i5 and Core i7 processors inside. Every purchase includes in-game content and supports the total prize purse of Intel Extreme Masters World Championship. Feel like a pro.
Everybody going through it like whoa, through it like whoa, through it like whoa, going through it like whoa. You already know.
Start your esports career now at play.eslgaming.com.
What a series so far between these two juggernauts. Stats and Dark, 1 game apiece at the end of 2 grueling matches. Here they are facing off for that spot in the grand finals. And we are just 2 games away. Either player can still be taking it. We are going to be going to Cactus Valley in map number 3. This is a moment that will define both of these players' careers as we go here into the top left-hand side of Cactus Valley. Our red Zerg player, it is Dark.
And his opponent, playing as the Blue Protoss, finally brought it back after a fantastic game. It is Stats! Now guys, PvZ very rarely goes into the split map situations so many times in a row. Like the 2 previous games felt a little bit like they're a once in a best of 5 thing, where like 2 games in a row you saw both players splitting the map, playing it a little bit slow, going to a lot of air units and stuff. This matchup can be fast, it can be furious, and it very well could be here on this map, which is the map on which Dark earlier in the tournament went for a mass link speed with some drop up against Showtime and was very successful with it.
And I think this could be a very quick map, Todd, because we saw there Dark's hatchery was blocked. Stats happened to scout him in the first position. Dark has no idea which side Stats spawned on, so he's gone and accidentally taken the base to war. Oh, very unfortunate for Dark. He's going to be really unhappy when his Overlord comes in and sees that his 3rd base is just, it's a stone's throw away from the Protoss. This is really bad for Zerg. You need a lot of space to prepare when those pushes move out.
You can adjust. It's 1-1 right now. If he wants to take a chance, he can. If he wants to go into some sort of link speed, mass Zergling and drop like he did against Showtime, he could do that. It would be very risky, especially against somebody like Stats who's just so good at scouting and adjusting. And he's making sure he stays a lot of extra time here right now in the main base of Dark to make sure he spots how much gas exactly is being mined and when those Zerglings are going to be on the way.
Dark here, he doesn't even blink once. He just takes the 3rd base immediately. He is not afraid of any aggression. Of course, he's seen the relatively fast Nexus out of Stats. He knows that there isn't going to be any crazy rush coming out of the Protoss player just yet. So going to go ahead with a very economic opening, just looking to build that economy up as quickly as possible.
And Dark is still mining gas here. Really starting to wonder whether he might actually want to go for a lot of links. We're going to find out here momentarily. Stargate now going to start in the back of the main middle line here of Stats. Pretty well hidden. He's going to go forward with the Adept. And that one Adept is the one that's supposed to scout whether there is aggression coming, and the Roach Warren actually starts there.
That's a very quick Roach Warren. That is not a defensive Roach Warren. That's almost certainly aggressive. Great Spore Crawler trick there to save that drone from going down. The Adept comes in, takes out a Zergling, forces the Spore trick, and pulls out. Nice little bit of opening pressure from Stats.
And actually, there was not an additional Adept made.
Oh man, there's
It's
actually
just the 2 that he made in the start, and no 3rd one queued yet. You want to keep on making Adepts and Mothership Core against aggression headed your way here.
Yeah, look at how many Overlords there are. Roaches are about to spill out for Dark. This is a fast attack. He's going to go pretty much all in with this. 4, 5, 6, no, 7 Roaches on the way for Dark. 8 Roaches, and it's going to be non-stop Speedlings behind that. He's looking to bust the front. That Oracle of Stats is going to be the first warning of this. He needs to spot it as soon as possible.
Stats getting a bunch of pylons on the right-hand side of his main base. He thinks he's being dropped. He's reading this wrong. It's going to be a full-on ground attack coming from the front gates. Luckily for him, he started Warp Gate very early, so it's close to finishing. That would be very helpful for him to hold this. The gateways are lining up very well with when Warp Gate is going to finish, but he might need to re-wall here behind his Adept with some buildings to prevent those Roaches from getting in, because if they do, it's going to be a disaster.
No Mothership Core out right now. He spotted this coming, but he doesn't really have any response. He does have one Void Ray on the way in that main base. The Roaches are spilling on in. Zerglings rallying behind it. That Void Ray is his only saving grace right now, but it's not out just yet.
Yeah, he needs to get it. He needs to get it right now. He's going to start on warping in units. Oracle still walking at the wall here. Overcharge not going to be used because the Pylon is dead before he can. And Stats needs to hold on. He's still got a good walker count here. If he can stay alive, not lose too many probes, he would be in a good position to win this game, but Dark is the one killing a ton of units. With already 7 probes dead here.
This is non-stop aggression from Dark, but he needs to get more done. He's still down 10 workers trying to land corrosive bars on the Void Ray. It doesn't work. The Mothership Core with the overcharge on the wall, and even a Queen is coming, but it is desperate for Dark. Finally, he breaks on through. Those Zerglings get in. He needs more damage. He can't settle for this.
He needs to re-wall. Mothership's gonna have to fly towards the main here, otherwise the Queen's gonna get rid of it. So Oracle too low on energy to really be relevant there. Probes being pulled, but more of those are gonna die. We are now 23 drones against 29 probes. It's still okay for Stats if he's able to survive, but that second Nexus in immediate danger here.
Oh, the Adepts in the main base get surrounded. Both of those go down to the Zerglings. Void Ray not too strong at fighting against Zerglings on their own. And now that those Adepts have fallen, the Zerglings are running rampant in the drone line. The probes are falling apart. They get a nice surround. They do the best they can. But at the end of that, another 5 probes fall down. And Dark starts up drone production. He's going to transition.
Yeah, he needs to drone up very heavily here behind this. The fact that he sent the Queen forward actually and wasn't able to kill any of the air units is the big deal, because behind this, he didn't have any Queen for the longest time. Now he finally got one, he's about to get 2 more. But he wasn't able to inject for a very long time. So for him to actually get ahead on drones with the Overlord he just lost, it's not going to be possible for a long time. It's going to be only 32 drones against 29 probes. And Stats is going to be chrono boosting out more and more of these probes. Probably looking to try and go into a third, maybe do some of one of his own adept attack here eventually as well, because he already has 3 gateways.
Stats has got a lot of important tech units out right now. Multiple Oracles hitting the field, a couple of Sentries gathering energy, and that Void Ray guarding him from any sort of follow-up attack. Stats right now, with the utility these air units give him, is set to potentially pull ahead here in the mid-game, already up 6 workers, and now a Void Ray coming across the map, starting to snipe down Overlords. This is a nightmare situation for Dark. He most definitely did not get enough damage done.
Yeah, he's gonna supply block him once again there. This is not what you want here as Dark. You want to be able to drone up as much as you can before you have to start on making units. He might actually get the Roach run because the Oracles are chasing the Queen under the Spore, and they get her, even though he gets one of the Oracles here, those Dark. There is no transfuse available, and that Void Ray is going to town on this Roach run, which, when he actually made that, I thought that it was a good location because he would be very well hidden and almost unscoutable, but it turns out this is actually under threat and might die eventually here in this game.
Stats really finding his footing in this game number 3. Moving out to secure that 3rd base. He's got the Adept Glaives upgrade on the way behind this. He's looking very comfortable.
He's getting 3 more gates big. If he kills that Roach Run and no more Roaches can be made and makes enough Adepts, it's just going to be against pure Links and no Banelings. It would be an ideal scenario, but somehow the Void Ray is just going to fly back instead of killing that free Roach Run he could have had.
The Oracle's still dancing around, looking for some scouting in the back of the main base. Gonna see if it can find any openings there, but his Void Ray spots the push coming. It is a wave 2 in attack. Ravages Zerglings and Queens rushing across the map. A lot of Stats army trapped out here at his 3rd base.
Yeah.
I think he needs to recall.
And cancel that 3rd base. Yeah, it's a great choice here. I think if he had overcharged and tried to fight, he would have lost everything. Right now, this is the next wave here of this all-in by Dark. 35 drones to 44 probes. He needs to make something happen one more time. Cybernetics core is going to have to be replaced immediately, and with these pylons here, Stats should be fine, but a couple corrosive by too many, and you could be in big trouble very quickly here as Stats.
Look at that sentry count. So many force fields ready to defend this choke point. Dark, he realizes he can't force his way in, but he goes a little bit too deep. 2 Ravagers get snapped in half. Great defense by Stats.
And in the meantime, Evolution Chamber started a stasis trap actually triggered in his main base here of Dark, trapping a lot of these drones that are not mining.
That's actually a massive amount of lost mining time in the back behind this. But now Dark doing a fantastic job of keeping up the contain. The problem is, look at that Adept count. There's no way that he can stop him from breaking out now. Stats is gonna go for it. Sentries, Void Rays, and Adepts jump on top of Dark's army. He's just gonna engage it front on. Great corrosive biles land, taking down the Void Ray. And the Ravagers doing a decent job, but those Adepts are just too meaty. They break out, and Stats is held on.
just so solid defensively. He's going to go for the counter-attack big, and I don't know if there's going to be enough for Dark to be able to hold on against this massive amount of adepts. There is an Oracle as well, and Sentries to really help with this. And Dark in a world of trouble here in this game is going to try to evacuate the third base.
So many adepts, they're just going to shade right on top of the Zerg force. Drones being forced to engage. The sentry's a little bit far behind, but I think there might just be too many adepts here. The Queens valiantly do fight off the Oracles, but the adepts are here. The Guardian Shield comes in. Stalker's joining the fray, and I think Stats has done it. GG takes game number 3 and the 2-1 lead versus Dark. That's a very important victory for him here. Now only 1 game away from that grand finals. Wants to make it up there. He wants to be facing off against TY in that grand finals for that $100,000, for that world championship IEM title.
We warned you guys, don't blink on Cactus Valley because we could be seeing some aggression, and what attacks here by Dark, committing everything he had to that first Roach and League attack, and then realizing he had killed enough probes, droning up a little bit behind this and going for wave number 2. That's just too little, too solid. I was really worried that he might take the fight on the third base when that was coming, but he's just so insanely good. For him, there was not a single doubt. He should just recall out of there, be patient. So many Protoss would have overextended, try to fight from multiple sides with sentries, which is not what you should do against this many Ravagers, and Stats made the second defense look absolutely easy. In the first one, I was actually worried, but the second one, once he recalled and went for those force fields, like, okay, well, Dark is in a lot of trouble, and Stats, right now, got the momentum here.
I feel like whenever Stats sees what his opponent's up to, he always makes the right decision. And that game, those Oracles saw everything. He spotted the Roachling attack coming. He already had a Void Ray on the way. The follow-up attack he spotted nice and early, and his responses are always perfect. The pressure's on now for the Zerg player to try and bring it back. Launching into game number 4 on Abyssal Reef. Spawning down here in the bottom right-hand side, our red Zerg player, it is Dark!
His opponents in the north. It is the best Protoss in the world. It is Stats!
Match between these two players. Such slow late game. But that third map there, a quick and brutal game. Dark's aggressive strategy not quite working out for him.
Going for a quick Nexus there. Can be a little bit a good, nice first little win there.
That's really good, yeah. Sees the stuff. Wonder if he's going to keep his Overlord speed upgrade or maybe cancel that since he saw the tech. Looks like he's going to hang on to that. So Dark really wanting to get the follow-up scout. This is just so typical of Dark. He's such a strong macro player. He loves playing the mid game, the late game. Almost any matchup he goes into, he is confident. He thinks he is the best Zerg in the world. He knows it deep in his heart. He thinks if he can see everything his opponent's doing, he should not lose. So he's going to invest in that early Overlord speed, and he's going to scout everything that Stats is up to.
Evolution Chamber going down now, most likely going to be for the +1 melee and melee attack upgrades that Dark likes to go into. This is Baneling heavy style. Really one of these Zergs to truly master that style and show the world how this is meant to be played. All alike. That's going for the Twilight Council after adding on 2 additional gateways. He's just going to be resonating glaives, I assume, for a lot of adepts, and eventually going to a 3rd base.
Interestingly, I do remember Fast Twilight coming down with that big adept attack he did against Nurture, but I think the timings were probably a little bit different with that, yeah. With the fast gases, he probably went a more macro-focused style. But Dark, well prepared for the first Oracle there.
Yeah, he's got a Quince actually attacking that before it can even do any damage. He's going to have to get out of there. He has stats. That was a little bit uncharacteristic that he wasn't paying attention to that. With the +1 melee on the way, we now have the Baning Nest being added on. Dark wants to be ready for a big wave of a if it were to come. The standard Void Ray is on the way after the 2nd Oracle. You need that guy to clear out the Overlords around your base, whether or not there is Pneumatized Carapace.
He's want to go for a Baneling drop. He's going to try and sneak all the way across the map, hopefully without it being spotted. Lots of Zerglings in the production tab here.
Oh, he's loading up the Queens.